are staring at your screen. You've hit this just massive, seemingly insurmountable roadblock at work. And maybe the office around you is buzzing, or, maybe your remote workspace is just dead silent.
Right.
But all you can focus on is that little digital cursor just blinking at you, kind of mocking you.
Oh, it genuinely feels like a countdown timer for your own professional credibility. Just blink, blink, blink.
Yeah.
And the physical reaction is real, too. Yeah, heart rate ticks up, your stomach ties itself into that very specific kind of knot. You know the one.
I know exactly the one, because deep down that you have to ask for help to get past this, but you're completely terrified that reaching out to your team will just, expose you.
Exactly. You're worried that the moment you typed, hey, I don't understand this, the whole illusion shatters, and they all collectively think, wait, why did we hire this person again?
Which is an incredibly heavy psychological burden to carry around all day. That fear of being found out, of the imposter syndrome, finally catching up with you. It dictates so much of our daily behavior in the workplace. It really does. But the sources we're unpacking for today's deep dive completely dismantle that fear.
They do, yeah. It's fascinating stuff.
We're looking at a stack of research centered on what organizational psychologists are now calling the professional help paradox.
Right, the professional help paradox.
And the core mission of our time today, for you listening, is to take that terrifying, stomach-dropping moment of not knowing an answer and completely transform it. We are going to explore how the highest performers actually use their technical gaps, not as moments of weakness, but as masterclasses in professional collaboration.
Because the professional help paradox, it completely shatters this outdated, highly defensive notion that asking questions is a liability.
Yeah.
According to the behavioral data from top-tier leaders in 2026, they do not view asking for help as a gap in their armor. Quite the opposite, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they view strategic information gathering as a high-level power move.
Okay, wait, I have to stop you there. Because the phrase asking for help is a power move it sounds like a classic corporate oxymoron, right?
I know. It sounds like a bumper sticker.
Right. It feels like something printed on a motivational poster in a break room, which offers zero comfort to someone who is currently breaking into a cold sweat over a Slack message.
Fair point.
So before we can even touch on how to ask for help, I think we have to dissect why holding back is worse. Because my instinct, and I'm sure the listener's instinct too, is that staying quiet and just trying to figure it out alone is the safest play. It protects the ego.
And the sources refer to that exact instinct as imposter syndrome silence. And it is statistically the most dangerous option for your career.
Wait, the most dangerous?
Absolutely. To understand the behavioral science behind why it's so dangerous, you have to look at the collateral damage of that silence. When you stay quiet to protect your ego, you aren't just managing your own reputation, you're actively creating massive, invisible risk for the entire project.
Because nobody knows you're stuck?
Exactly. You become a hidden bottleneck. But the highest performers, they operate on a completely different psychological wavelength. They utilize what the research calls the high performer inquiry.
Okay, high performer inquiry.
Right, which basically reframes the question from a personal failure into a marker of strategic project stewardship.
Okay, let's translate strategic project stewardship into plain English for a second. Let's say you're driving a bus full of executives, right?
I like this.
Staring straight ahead and driving in circles because you're too proud to look at the map, that doesn't make you look like a good driver. It just wastes everyone's gas and time.
That's spot on.
I mean, if you're building a massive skyscraper and you're the contractor on the 4th floor who realizes the blueprints look a little strange, imposter syndrome silence is deciding to just pour the concrete anyway, just because you don't want the lead architect to think you can't read a blueprint.
Yes. And so you build all the way to the 10th floor on a faulty foundation. That isn't protecting your reputation. That is ensuring the entire building eventually collapses.
It's wild when you put it like that.
Right. And that is a much more accurate visualization of the stakes involved. The fallout when that building collapses is never about the fact that you originally misunderstood the blueprint.
No, of course not.
The professional fallout, the real damage to your career, stems entirely from the fact that you didn't raise your hand when you knew there was an ambiguity.
So the silence is the actual sabotage.
Yes, exactly.
But that begs a massive psychological question, I think. Why is this our default setting? Why has modern work culture conditioned us to adopt this deeply apologetic, almost shameful posture when we simply need a piece of missing data?
Well, the research points directly to our early educational conditioning. Think about how we're graded for the first 20 years of our lives.
Oh, right, tests and exams.
Exactly. The educational system teaches us that knowing the answer independently, like in total isolation, gets you an A. Asking your neighbor for help during the test is cheating. Seeking the teacher's help means you didn't study hard enough. We internalize this idea that competence equals complete independence.
But a highly integrated, fast-paced 2026 workplace isn't a closed book exam.
Far from it. It's a highly interdependent ecosystem. The leaders who excel realize that the goal of modern work isn't personal omniscience. No one expects you to be a human encyclopedia.
Right.
The goal is collective momentum. If your silence stalls the momentum, you're failing the assignment, regardless of how smart you look doing it.
Okay, so if we accept that silence is project sabotage, then the shift has to happen in our execution, how we actually break that silence. And based on the sources, that begins entirely with our vocabulary.
Yes, vocabulary is everything here.
We have to look at the exact precise words we use when we finally decide to reach out.
The tactical application here is brilliant. The sources emphasize that the first step in the high-performer inquiry is replacing apologetic hesitation with precision vocabulary.
Meaning, no more saying sorry?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The very first psychological crutch that has to be eliminated from your vocabulary is the phrase, "I'm sorry, I'm lost."
Mm-hmm.
Or the equally damaging, "sorry to bother you, but."
Oh man, even just hearing, "I'm sorry, I'm lost" out loud, it immediately lowers your status in the interaction, doesn't it?
It really does.
You're positioning yourself as a burden before the other person has even read your question. It's almost the verbal equivalent of a dog rolling over and showing its belly.
That's a perfect way to describe it, because it triggers a specific dynamic in the other person's brain.
Mm-hmm.
You're positioning yourself as a dependent. They now have to stop their work to rescue you.
Yeah, nobody wants to be nobody wants to be the rescuer all day.
Right. So instead, the research introduces the concept of assertive anchors.
Assertive anchors.
Yes, these are clarity-seeking phrases that signal project ownership rather than personal confusion.
Yeah.
The specific anchor highlighted in the study, which demonstrates this shift perfectly, is, quote, "to ensure total alignment with the roadmap."
Okay, let me push back on that phrasing on behalf of the listener.
Go for it.
Because if I'm messaging a developer or a designer, someone I have coffee with, someone I send ridiculous memes to, and I suddenly drop a phrase like, "to ensure total alignment with the roadmap," they're going to screenshot that and mock me in a group chat.
Oh, 100%.
Right. It sounds incredibly stiff and robotic. Doesn't that kind of corporate speak damage authentic collaboration?
That is a very fair critique, and it's a trap a lot of people fall into when trying to sound professional. But the sources actually address this nuance. The goal of an assertive anchor isn't to sound like a corporate robot who just swallowed the buzzword dictionary.
Right.
The goal is the architecture of the phrase. You want to signal project stewardship instead of dependency. It's about framing yourself as a peer consulting a colleague, not a student begging a teacher for the answer key.
Okay. So I don't necessarily have to use those exact rigid words, but I need to capture the energy of ownership.
Exactly.
So I could say something like, just making sure my data maps to your current sprint instead of, I don't know what you guys are working on.
Precisely. You adapt the phrasing to your specific office culture, but the underlying psychological structure remains intact. You are anchoring your request in the shared goals of the team.
I like that.
And the sources also highlight a secondary tactic here, highlighting your existing progress using high-level English verbs.
Okay, high-level verbs. Give me an example.
Well, instead of saying, "I looked at the data and I don't get it," you say, "I've audited the current data and I need your insight on the final variable."
Wow. Let's dissect the difference between looked at and audited, or "I don't get it" versus "I need your insight." That is a massive psychological shift for both the speaker and the listener.
It's entirely about cognitive priming. Verbs like audited, analyzed, or synthesized imply that work has already been done.
Right, you're not just dumping it on them.
Exactly. They tell the person you're asking that you aren't just dumping a raw, unprocessed problem onto their lap. You've already invested sweat equity. You're inviting them to collaborate on the final 10% rather than asking them to do the entire 100%.
That makes total sense. But that brings up a critical structural issue. We have the vocabulary now. We know to use assertive anchors and high-level verbs to avoid sounding like a helpless novice.
Yep.
But you can use all the impressive verbs in the world if the question itself is a disorganized, rambling mess. The person you're asking is still going to resent the interruption because they can't figure out what you actually need.
Which is the fastest way to burn your professional capital. And this introduces the most actionable tool from the sources, The Context Action Gap Framework,
Yeah.
or the CAG Framework.
The CAG framework.
Yes, this is the anatomical structure of a strategic inquiry.
Walk us through the mechanics of context, action, gap. How does this actually look in practice?
So the CAG framework is designed to drastically reduce the cognitive load on the person helping you. First, context. You briefly set the stage so they know exactly what part of the project you're referring to.
Right, giving them the big picture.
Yeah, and the rule here is to strip away all unnecessary technical jargon, especially if you're talking to cross-functional stakeholders who might not speak your department's specific language.
Makes sense. What's the action?
Second is action. You state clearly what you have already attempted or completed. This is where those high-level verbs come in. It proves to the team that you have already done the heavy lifting.
And then the gap.
Finally, the gap. You isolate the specific singular piece of missing information you need from them to move forward.
You know, the genius of this is how it protects the helper's energy.
It really does.
It makes me think of a culinary analogy for the listeners. Imagine a high-pressure Michelin star kitchen, right? It's the difference between a junior sous chef walking up to the head chef, throwing their hands up and just saying, I don't know how to cook this dish.
Oh, that would be a disaster. If
Yeah.
you do that, you're forcing the head chef to stop everything, figure out what station the sous chef is at, what step of the recipe they're on, what ingredients they've already used, and what went wrong.
Yeah, it's exhausting.
It drains the head chef's cognitive energy entirely.
But if that same sous chef uses the context action gap framework, the entire interaction changes. They walk up and say, I prepared the red wine reduction for table 7. That is the context.
Right.
I balanced the acidity with a touch of sugar and let it simmer for 20 minutes. That is the action, proving they did the work and applied their own expertise.
Yes.
But I need your palate to identify which specific spice is missing from the finish. That is the gap.
That's a phenomenal example. Look at the psychological effect of that second scenario. The sous chef isn't asking for basic instruction. They're framing the request as a high-level strategy consultation.
Yeah, it feels completely different.
The head chef doesn't feel burdened. They feel respected for their unique expertise. When you use the context action gap framework, you are essentially serving up the problem on a silver platter. You're making it incredibly easy for them to give you a fast, highly accurate answer because you have isolated the single variable only they hold.
This all makes perfect sense when we're talking about face-to-face interactions,
Yeah.
a kitchen, a boardroom. But let's bring this into the reality of 2026.
Let's do it.
The vast majority of these interactions do not happen face-to-face. They happen in text-heavy digital environments. We are dealing with AI-integrated Slack channels, Microsoft Teams, asynchronous communication across time zones. How does this strategy survive the digital minefield where tone is completely invisible?
That is the ultimate crucible for these techniques. The sources dedicate a significant portion of their analysis to managing these dynamics in digital spaces, primarily because tone is so easily distorted by text.
So easily.
A simple question, even one structured perfectly with CAG, can easily be misinterpreted as panic, or conversely, it can be read as demanding and aggressive, depending entirely on the mood and workload of the person reading it.
Right, returning to that blinking digital cursor, it's terrifying precisely because text strips away our humanity. I can't rely on a self-deprecating smile or relaxed body language to say, hey, I'm working hard, just need a quick favor. It's just cold, hard pixels.
Which is why the researchers emphasize micro-validation techniques for digital spaces.
Micro-validation.
Yeah. In a chat thread, once you get your answer, you have to confirm your understanding without sounding repetitive, but also without sounding unsure of yourself. You want to avoid that endless awkward loop of, got it, followed by, makes sense, followed by, oh, okay, I understand now.
Oh man, I do that all the time. I feel like if I just say thanks, it's too abrupt. So how do we implement microvalidation practically in a chat thread? Because if I'm constantly validating every piece of information someone sends me, don't I risk coming across as overly anxious or worse, like a total sycophant trying too hard to prove I'm paying attention?
It's a fine line. The trick to effective microvalidation is to position your response not as personal gratitude, but as a mechanism to optimize team velocity.
Optimize team velocity. Let's translate that. You mean proving that their answer is actually helping us hit our 5 p.m. deadline?
Exactly that. Instead of just typing got it, which tells the AI summaries in your team absolutely nothing about the state of the project, you reflect the strategic impact of the answer they just provided.
So what does that look like?
For example, they give you the missing variable in the chat. You reply with, understood. Adjusting that variable now will optimize our timeline for the afternoon deliverable.
Oh, that is a brilliant pivot. You're making your request and your understanding of the answer a direct benefit to the collective timeline. You aren't just confirming that your eyes saw the text. You're confirming how their expertise helps the entire team move faster.
Exactly. It neutralizes the invisible anxiety inherent in text-based communication. The tone becomes entirely focused on momentum. You are demonstrating, on the digital record, that your brief pause to ask a question wasn't a lapse in competence. It was a calculated, necessary move to prevent a much larger, more expensive delay down the road.
Okay, so let's track the journey here for the listener. The message is sent. The tone is perfectly optimized for team momentum. You used your assertive anchors so you didn't sound apologetic.
Check.
You nailed the context action gap so they didn't have to guess what you wanted.
Check.
And you used micro-validation to confirm receipt. It worked. They gave you the exact answer you needed. You are in the clear right. We can finally close the laptop and breathe.
Well, not quite. And this is where the difference between a standard employee and a high-level leader truly emerges.
Oh, come on, there's more.
Just one more step. The strategic ask doesn't end when the help is received. According to the data, the final and perhaps most critical step for your long-term reputation is what you do with the answer. You have to close the loop.
What does closing the loop look like in practice? Because my instinct is to just shower them with praise. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. I owe you a coffee.
While polite, showering them with that kind of praise actually undoes a lot of the structural work you just did. Saying, "You saved my life," puts you right back into that dependent, helpless novice category. You were making them the hero, and you the victim who needed rescuing.
I never thought about it like that. It feels polite, but it's actually submissive.
It is. Closing the loop is about demonstrating how you will apply the provided information to drive immediate project results. The sources strongly advise using follow-up phrases that pivot the conversation away from your previous need and directly into your next steps and strategic execution.
Okay, give us an example of how to execute that pivot.
So instead of, "You saved my life," you use the receipt of information to reinforce your competence. You say something like, "Excellent insight. I am integrating this into the final model now, which will allow us to push the update before the 3 p.m. deadline."
Wow. This might be the ultimate aha moment of this entire deep dive for you listening.
It's a game changer.
The real power move isn't just the ask itself, it's the receipt. It's how you catch the ball when they throw it to you. Because if we think about it from the helper's perspective, it taps into a very basic human psychology. We all like to feel smart. We all like to feel valuable.
We do.
It is incredibly satisfying for the person giving the help to see their advice immediately turned into tangible action.
Absolutely. It validates not just their expertise, but the time they took out of their own busy schedule to assist you.
Yes. If I take 10 minutes to explain a complex system to a colleague, and their only response is just a thumbs up emoji or cool thanks, I feel a little deflated.
Right. You're left wondering if it even helped.
Exactly. I don't know if they actually understood me or if they're just trying to end the conversation. But if they follow up an hour later and say, "I applied your methodology to the current data set and it resolved the bug," I feel like a genius.
Exactly.
I feel like my time was incredibly well spent. And psychologically, that invokes the reciprocity principle. It makes me eager to collaborate with that person again in the future.
And that is precisely how you build a reputation as a proactive communicator.
Yeah.
You transition from being someone who merely extracts information from the team to someone who leverages team intelligence to minimize errors and maximize output. You become a catalyst for the whole department's success. That is what the sources refer to as building leadership capital.
Leadership capital. We started this deep dive with the dread of the blinking cursor, the knot in the stomach, and the paralyzing fear of looking like a novice. But we've learned today that vulnerability, when it's stripped of its apologies and paired with the precise vocabulary of collaboration, is a completely different beast.
It really is.
When you use assertive anchors, when you structure your inquiries using the context action gap framework, and when you optimize your digital tone with micro-validations, asking for help isn't a technical gap at all. It is a brilliant, highly visible demonstration of leadership.
It represents a complete paradigm shift. You are moving from an apologetic defensive mindset to one of strategic collaborative stewardship.
And what's truly remarkable is how universally this applies. It doesn't matter if you are debugging code in a tech firm, managing patient flow in a hospital, or designing a marketing campaign. The underlying mechanics of human collaboration, cognitive load, and psychological status remain exactly the same.
They absolutely do. And as we wrap up our analysis of these sources, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over.
Please do.
We have spent this entire deep dive looking at how you can demonstrate leadership capital when you need to ask for help. But consider the flip side of this psychological dynamic. If asking for help strategically is a marker of a high performer, how does the way you respond when a colleague asks you for help signal your own leadership abilities?
Oh, wow.
Right. Do you create an environment where the context-action gap thrives, where people feel psychologically safe bringing you their missing puzzle pieces? Or, through your tone or impatience, do you accidentally make your own team feel like novices by how you deliver your expertise?
That is a heavy, incredibly important question to sit with. The culture of any team is built on both sides of that interaction. To you, the listener, the next time you hit that inevitable roadblock and the cursor is blinking at you, remember the research. It's not a threat. It is an invitation to collaborate. Drop the apologies, strip away the jargon, use your assertive anchors, and step into your next big challenge with the confidence of a true strategic steward. Until next time, keep diving deep.